And 25 days after this event, he would actually be in a coma. But then he would die from organ failure and severe radiation poisoning at just the age of 24. This was actually the hand that he used to knock the brick off of the demon core. In 1946, a nuclear core was scheduled for detonation but was harmlessly melted down and made into a smaller core. Imagine the nuclear bomb that was detonated in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, was melted down into a small core that could fit in the size of your hands. This is the true story of the death core. Thank you for watching this video. I know this is like maybe your first time or a couple times on my channel, but please like this video and watch this video to the end because this story is very, very crazy. The terrible nuclear event that happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima only happened when the nuclear core went critical. Meaning inside the bomb, something would artificially compress a uranium sphere into a smaller volume using explosions. At the heart of an atomic blast is a radioactive core filled with atoms waiting to be released. The so-called demon core was the third core created in World War II. This core was actually also supposed to be dropped on Japan, but since they surrendered in time, the core no longer had a use. But a physicist working at Los Alamos in New Mexico took this core and he started to think, what does it take for a core of this stature to go critical? Otto Robert Frisch, a worker at Los Alamos, actually studied the neutron multiplication of uranium and plutonium. These elements naturally radiated neutrons, and if there's enough radioactive elements close together, it can create a chain reaction of neutrons that hit into each other and cause the whole reaction to go critical. But they figured out if they use a mirror-like device to have the neutrons bounce back in on themselves, this would also cause the core to go critical. But it wouldn't explode, it would only emit radiation, and this process actually used a lot less uranium and plutonium. In 1944, Frisch was actually leading the Los Alamos assembly facility and they did a dangerous amount of near-critical testing. The physicists in the group wanted to use a neutron-reflective material around a spear of uranium and plutonium to see how close they can get to critical. One of the staff members working there even said that the experiment was like tickling the tail of a sleeping dragon. But with the very real outcome of this test going critical and blasting every staff member with radiation, they continued with the experiment. But within just 2 years, this experiment would actually claim the life of 2 scientists. The first one being Harry K. Daghlian, and the second one being Louis Slotin. On August 21st, 1945, Harry Daghlian was actually doing an experiment on the demon core. He was actually placing the bricks around the core just to see how close he can get to going critical. He wanted to see how many it took and what was the placements that it took for the core to go critical. He was also using a special radar-like device to see the radiation coming off of the core. He got so close to critical so many times that he decided to stop the experiment and would then go home. But at home, he's really thinking about this experiment, and that night he actually came back to the facility, and he actually came back alone to do another test. Unlike his earlier experiments, this experiment now was basically the same layout, him just placing bricks around a core to see how close he can get to being critical, but he was about to place one more brick, and that radar that he had was basically saying if he placed that other brick, this is going to go critical. So cautiously, he decides to remove the brick, but then he accidentally drops it. And as soon as he dropped this, the demon core went instantly critical, and a blast of blue light and a bunch of heat instantly hit Daghlian. But with his quick reaction time, he actually knocks the brick onto the ground. But just within those seconds alone of it going critical, he received a massive dose of radiation. And 25 days after this event, he would actually be in a coma. But then he would die from organ failure and severe radiation poisoning at just the age of 24. This was actually the hand that he used to knock the brick off of the demon core. There was also a guard that was a couple feet away from Harry when he dropped the brick, and this guard would actually go on to live 33 years later, but eventually would die from radiation-induced leukemia. He was 29 years old at the time that he got exposed to the radiation. Daghlian was the first American to die from a critical accident. Before he died, he told them he was going to donate his body to science so they can study the dangers of radiation poisoning. Louis Slotin was one of Harry's colleagues. He would usually come to visit him every single day and spend a lot of time by his bedside. But what Louis didn't know, that 7 months later, he would succumb to the same fate. In 1946, Louis Slotin actually took over the critical assembly group from Frisch. They would actually move the site of where they did the experiment, but the danger of the experiment itself never actually changed. One of his colleagues actually warned him and said, keep doing the experiment that way and you will be dead within a year. But Louis wasn't worried. He was like, I got this. And he just continued doing the experiment. On May 21st, 1946, he was conducting another critical experiment with this demon core. This time, instead of using the bricks that Harry was using around the core, he would actually use 2 spears of beryllium, one on top and one on the bottom. He would put the core between the 2 spears of beryllium and he would lower them until they get so close that there's like a sliver left of space to see how close he can get to going critical. If the spear fully closed, the demon core would instantly go critical and everyone in that area would be hit with a blast of radiation. One day while performing the experiment, he actually removed the safe spacings that were put on the beryllium spheres. These safe spacings would actually stop the berylliums from hitting together because remember, if they hit together, this whole core is going critical. So instead of using the safe spacers, he would actually use his hand to push them together, but at the same time, he would use a flathead screwdriver to push down to see how close he could get till these 2 touch. And he actually did this experiment successfully many different times. But as 7 different colleagues watch him do this experiment, for some reason, the screwdriver just slips. No, it did not create an explosion, but the moment the spears touched, the demon core instantly went critical. Like with his friend Harry, a blue light instantly came from the core and a wave of heat hit every colleague in that room. And within a couple seconds, he got his hand on the top half of the fair and flipped the top half off of the demon core. And instinctually, 7 of these scientists would run out of the room, but Sultan would yell for them to come back, gave them all chalks and told them to mark where they were standing. He was actually doing the calculations of how much radiation hit them and how long do they have left to live. One of his colleagues in the room with him actually recalled his first words as, well, that does it, as the radiation ripped through their bodies. He would die 9 days later at the age of 33 in the same hospital that Harry Doglin would also die at. And as a result of the same incident and the same radioactive material. And the crazy part about it is that demonstration was supposed to be the final one before the core was actually used in a detonation test. In those moments, Louis was actually hit with 10 sieverts of radiation or 10,000 millisieverts of radiation, which is one of the highest dose of radiation a human body has ever taken. He was actually one of the people that got the most radiation in the world, but he wasn't the most. Check this video right here, and this video will show you the person that had the most radiation in history. The blue light that is often seen coming from the demon core is actually radiation. But what this radiation does is go through your body and completely rip up your DNA sequence and electrons from molecules. So I kind of think about it as hundreds of millions of mini particle bullets shooting through your body. Kind of like a molecule gun, but really, really small. But when enough molecular damage has been done, the radiation poisoning would then start to set in. And that is the end of the story. If you guys want to know about the story with the man that received the most radiation in history, please click on this video right here. And if you guys want to know about a man that actually got jumped by 300 women inside a courtroom, click on this video right here. I promise you they're good videos. But anyways, thank you for watching, and please click that like button, please.
Later?
Yeah, it depends, because I'm gonna have to go to this kid's crib and freestyle.
Oh my gosh, you're on camera. Alright.
Facts. I'm gonna edit that out, but I'm gonna let you know though.
I'll slow run over or something if she wants to show.
I bet.